Injuries played a big role in the Boston Red Sox downfall in 2024, but it wasn't even close to the entire story.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Hurlbut, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part is it is all completely free. So you might as well tune in because Locked On is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the show. You are halfway through the week. Keep trudging onward and continuing to work hard because that's what we are here to do as adults. And I am here to continue to bring you the best Boston Red Sox content that I can, even during a slow time in the offseason. I promise you it will be worth your while taking a listen to the show because we're going to be diving a little bit more into what the Red Sox need to do this offseason to improve as things progress. So as we sit here in mid-October and we think about the playoffs and how fun and crazy this postseason has been, and thinking about the fact that the Red Sox have not been able to be part of that, and just as fans not being able to experience that, it's definitely hurtful. And while we all want to see this Red Sox team succeed in the future, what exactly was it in 2024 that caused their downfall? Now, we're going to be diving into a lot of those things on today's show. And the biggest one that is pretty obvious is injuries. Injuries, I know, are part of the game. They play a factor in every team struggling a lot. But the biggest thing with the injuries for me is that there was never a period in the season where they didn't have injuries. They had things like fluke injuries, like Brayan injuring himself, slipping down the stairs of the dugout. And then you had guys like Trevor Story, who took a really bad fall when he was trying to dive for a catch at shortstop early on in the season. And he ended up missing most of the season and then was able to come back a little bit earlier than expected because he was ahead of schedule in his rehab process. People thought he wasn't going to play at all anymore in the season, but he ended up getting ahead of where he was supposed to be at. So we at least were able to see him for a little bit in the last month of the season. Then you look at a guy like Triston Casas, who was amped up and ready for a big 2024. Then he went down with an injury in April and again also missed the chunk of the season. A huge portion of it didn't come back till the end of the season again. So you look at those two players, key players in the Red Sox infield that would have helped with a lot more stability on defense and would have helped in the lineup to at least have some more power and more productivity. And even Trevor Story, when he came back, was making a positive impact at the plate because in his time with the Red Sox so far, generally, he has not been able to perform at the level that he wants to perform for himself and that the Red Sox expect from their players. And I know that he personally is really bummed by that and was bothered by the fact that he couldn't show Red Sox fans what he has to offer to this organization and this city because he hasn't been able to spend enough time on the field. So I know that was something that really bummed him out. And then he goes and gets this injury in 2024 that throws him off for pretty much the whole season. So for him to come back in the last month of the season and perform the way that he did offensively, I give him a ton of credit for that. And so you have to wonder what kind of season he would have had if he was around for the majority of it. Because if he was around for more of the season, does he have a big power bat that he can bring to that lineup? It really does make you wonder. Then you think about Triston Casas. I mean, he obviously came in slow out of the gates when he got back from his injury. Can't fully fault him for that. I mean, it's hard to be in his situation and try to get yourself to a point where you're hitting consistently well after you missed almost the whole season. So I definitely give him a little bit of a pass on that. But another player that had a really good rookie season in 2023 and was primed and ready to go in 2024. And then he goes down, and it's a huge disappointment for him and all of Red Sox Nation. So, two big injuries that took place for this Red Sox team. Tyler O'Neill couldn't stay on the field consistently all season long. He did generally play more games in 2024 than he did throughout the course of his career as a whole. But generally, him not being able to stay on the field and having stints where he would be on the IL was tough because he was a hot bat that the Red Sox had, a guy who could provide a lot of power and productivity in the lineup. So for him to go down in stints when he was hitting well and then he miss games and then come back, that's tough and ruins the flow of the offense. So for him to not be able to stay on the field all season long was definitely a disappointment. And we knew this going in with him. We knew that there was a risk of injury because he's somebody who throughout the course of his career has always had a problem with injuries. But when you think generally of him in the season he had in 2024, he performed when he was out there. And that's why it became a lot more discouraging as fans, the way that he went down more often than we would have hoped that he would. So then you had Rafael Devers, who was playing through an injury all season long, and he did miss some games due to them wanting to rest him in the middle of the season, but it wasn't a lot. He really didn't miss many games at all. And then in the last couple weeks of the season, the Red Sox were eventually like, all right, we're likely not making the playoffs. Let's put him on the bench and let him rest and recover so that he can be good to go for next year. And I was happy they did that because he needed that rest and he needed to be put in a position that allowed him to be able to get that shoulder healed. And hopefully now that he had that little bit of extra rest in the last couple of weeks of the season, and now he has the whole off season, that he's going to be able to work and get back to where he was prior to 2024. So I do bring that up because yes, his injury didn't physically impact how much he was playing because the Red Sox were still putting him in that lineup virtually every day. It's more the fact that his at-bats decreased and the way he was able to contribute decreased because he was in so much pain a lot of the time because of dealing with that shoulder. So that was the biggest thing that I wanted to bring up when it came to Devers is if he's healthy in 2024, he likely performs a lot better. So again, another injury that was key to this Red Sox team that threw off the overall flow of what this Red Sox team was trying to do. Then you look at pitching and the pitching injuries that the Red Sox had. I mean, Bello missed some time due to an injury, which was huge for the Red Sox in a bad way because they needed all of those starters. They needed an all hands on deck approach. And so for Bello to go down and for them to try to make ends meet in the pitching staff, that's tough. Then you have Garrett Whitlock, who missed the entirety of the season as well, and he's still recovering. So that was one less arm that the Red Sox had available to be able to use out of the bullpen or the rotation. And same with Lucas Giolito, another pitcher who the Red Sox acquired and couldn't pitch at all throughout the course of the season. And then you look at him and what he could have contributed out of the rotation. Would he have been the team's best starter? Likely not. But he at least could have been somebody who provided some stability in the middle of the rotations that the Red Sox didn't have to rely on guys who aren't as used to pitching that much, throwing that much. And maybe Cooper Criswell gets to stay in the bullpen in that case because they used him in the rotation after Whitlock got injured. And if his arm was used more in the bullpen, then the bullpen wouldn't have been as fatigued. So it's a spiral effect of that. Then you go to Liam Hendriks, another guy who was still recovering from Tommy John surgery. And the Red Sox knew this going into it and knew that the chances of him pitching in 2024 were slim. But that's a guy who could have been a huge help out of the bullpen, another arm that the Red Sox could have rotated into that mix of guys. instead of throwing the same guys out there all the time and having them clearly be fatigued and struggling due to that, you could have brought in Hendricks as a guy who could have contributed. So there are lots of injuries that you could look to during the 2024 season. And I didn't even get to the smaller injuries as much. The guys who didn't miss that much time, but were out. I mean, Vaughn Grissom, for example, got injured. And then when he came back from injury, played in AAA and then got called up at the very end of the season again. But they didn't have a consistent second baseman all season long because of Vaughn Grissom being on the injured list for the majority of the time. So that was a hard situation for the Red Sox to navigate too. So you can point to lots of different injuries that led to the Red Sox being in the position they were in. And you have to wonder if they would have been a playoff team with a fully healthy squad without the injuries. And I like to believe they would be. I mean, that was a factor, and guys were fatigued. And if other guys were healthy, they would have been able to help them out. So injuries may have been a huge issue for this Red Sox team, but that certainly wasn't the entirety of the story. And coming up, I'm going to be going over more issues that the Red Sox had in 2024. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel is a great way to earn lots of money, and those are some great deals to be able to win that type of money and get yourself in a good position when it comes to your sports betting. So definitely check out FanDuel and start winning some instant money because you really cannot go wrong with it. In talking about the Red Sox 2024 season and looking back on everything, there were certainly lots of frustrations that took place, a team that we felt like had potential. And for a portion of the season before the All-Star break, really in June/July, the Red Sox were looking like they had a shot and they were looking like a team that could contend. But then things started going downhill for them after the All-Star break. Everything unraveled. They acquired some guys at the trade deadline. Those guys didn't pan out, which, speaking of injuries, I mean, two of those acquisitions out of the bullpen in Lucas Sims and Luis Garcia were guys who were acquired at the bullpen, and they got injured. It ended up missing basically the rest of the season after they were acquired, after they made a few outings. Then you had James Paxton, who only made it through a couple starts and had to leave his second start super early in the game with an injury and wasn't able to come back. So lots of different factors and injuries that made a part in this whole thing. And on top of the injuries, it was overall the lack of moves that were made in the offseason last year and at the trade deadline. Because if you look at the offseason last year, trading for Tyler O'Neill was a win for the Red Sox for sure. He's a guy who provided much needed right-handed power in the lineup for a team that didn't have a lot of that prior to him coming. So that was a big win for the Red Sox. And you look at the Alex Verdugo trade and the fact that he's been struggling with the Yankees this year. And you could say that the Red Sox generally did okay in that trade. I mean, Greg Weisser definitely wasn't exactly a win for Boston. He had his moments, but overall he struggled in the Red Sox bullpen in 2024. Then you have Richard Fitz, who impressed at the minor league level and got to come up and make a few starts with a major league team. He struggled in one of those, but overall, he was generally good and he was able to get the job done when he made those starts with the Boston Red Sox. So you look at all of that and you say, well, if he has this kind of potential and he's showing that he has the tools to be able to be a reliable starting pitcher out of the Red Sox rotation, then it's hard to feel really poorly about how that trade went down. And then you have Nick Judas, who is another pitcher the Red Sox got in that trade. We won't really know how he's going to pan out yet. He's still in the minors, and we'll see when he eventually gets called up to the Red Sox what kind of impact he does make. But so far, that trade is still pending. We're still waiting to see what the aftermath overall is with those three arms that the Red Sox got in that trade. But then you have the trade deadline acquisitions. I mean, Lucas Sims and Luis Garcia both severely underperformed when coming to Boston. Sims was a great reliever in Cincinnati, and Luis Garcia was with the Angels, and he was pitching well with them. Both of those guys were expected to come into the Red Sox and be lockdown guys in the pen that helped this team get over that hump and earn a playoff spot. Neither of them ended up in that situation. They both went out there and struggled. They didn't have the command. They gave up lots of runs, and they were reasons why the Red Sox were losing some games. Garcia, especially, he gave up tons of runs in those outings. And Lucas Sims, too, was shaky. And then obviously they both went on the injured list, so that could have been a part of it. But it's just tough to think about the fact that Craig Breslow missed on those because he saw these guys as truly guys who could help the Red Sox get over that missing the playoff hump and finally get in this year. And that just totally is not what happened. And then you look at another trade deadline acquisition in Danny Jansen, who was supposed to be this big right-handed power bat that the Red Sox got, who was supposed to help balance out the lineup, but he wasn't performing offensively. Is he a good defensive catcher? Yes, absolutely. And with the catching situation that the Red Sox had with Reese McGuire and Connor Wong, it definitely made sense to bring in somebody like Jansen because of the fact that he has a really nice ability to stop balls going to him behind the dish, even if they're all over the place, and he has a good arm to throw out potential base stealers. But the problem was they weren't only bringing him here for his defense. Yes, that obviously played a factor, but they were bringing him here because they felt like he could be a solid right-handed addition, a guy who hit so well at Fenway throughout the course of his career prior to that. So I'm sure that was a factor too and came into consideration with the Red Sox. And they were like, well, this guy has a history of pitching well overall here when he's in Boston, so it might make sense for us to bring him in to be that guy who could be locked down in those situations and be able to hit well and focus himself and drive in some runs for the Red Sox. And that certainly did not happen, and he did not turn out to be what the Red Sox were hoping that he would be. So some of the trades that Craig Breslow has made, he hasn't exactly hit on, and that's something that's troublesome for the future. Is does he have the capability to identify the right kind of talent that this team needs moving forward, especially from a pitching standpoint? And you would think because he used to be a pitcher that would be his area of expertise, but he has a lot of proving to do this offseason when it comes to the fan base, is showing us that he has the capability of acquiring the right pitching prospects to come into this organization and the right pitchers to make an impact immediately at the major league level. And from an offensive standpoint, again, obviously he hit on O'Neill, but he didn't hit on Danny Jansen. And also when Triston Casas went down, he acquired Garrett Cooper and Dom Smith to play first base. Garrett Cooper was absolutely putrid, could not hit to save his life. And Dom Smith at first was starting off really slow, and people were saying, wow, Garrett Cooper and Dom Smith both are a painful experience to watch. Both of these guys can't hit, and they can't play a good first base defensively. And Dom Smith certainly struggled on defense early on, but his defense started to get better throughout the course of his time in Boston, and he started hitting better too. His batting average got above 200 compared to the 195 it was prior to that, and he ended up being able to get that batting average up more and more over his time with the Boston Red Sox. And not only all of that, but he also showed a great leadership ability by being a veteran with experience in the clubhouse that Red Sox players could look up to based on his time in the league and the hardships that he had gone through. And he knew going into it what the situation was. And he knew Triston Casas would eventually be coming back and that he would no longer be needed on this Red Sox team. But he still went out there and gave it 100% every single day. And I think that's what a lot of the younger players on this Red Sox team needed, was a guy who could do that, a guy who could go out there and show that no matter how hard it gets, you still go out and give 100% and play your best baseball every single day. So Dom Smith ended up eventually being a guy that worked out for the Red Sox. I feel like they brought in both him and Cooper just to see which one would work out better, because they needed somebody to play first base in the interim until Casas came back, and ultimately that did not end up being Cooper and ended up being Dom Smith. So I applaud Breslow for that. Dom Smith definitely adapted and made his mark in Boston. But there have been several questionable moves that Breslow made and lack thereof. The Red Sox front office promised that they would go full throttle in the offseason leading up to 2024. That's the infamous phrase that nobody's going to forget. But where was the full throttle energy? Because they didn't go out and sign a big name starting pitcher. I mean, the starting pitcher they got was Lucas Giolito, and he couldn't even pitch. And even if he was healthy, there was no guarantee that he would be an ace. The Red Sox didn't go out and get an ace. They didn't go out and really truly improve the lineup. They could have added another right-handed bat for sure into that lineup. And overall with the pitching staff, the bullpen too, there were guys who were available that they could have acquired that they shied away from heading into the 2024 season. And it really sent this message that the Red Sox weren't ready to spend and invest in the current team. They still were focused on the future and investing more in the farm system. And the results on the field in 2024 were affected by it. And that is the biggest thing to me that went wrong for the Red Sox is that the front office set all of these expectations of what they were going to do. And then they went and did something else and just let all of these big name players go elsewhere. And you would think with the Yankees signing Juan Soto that the Red Sox would get moving and try to make a move that tops that, because that was a big trade for the Yankees. I mean, they gave up some talent to get him, but he's helped them a lot this year, and now they find themselves in the ALCS. So I thought that was going to fuel a little bit of a fire in Red Sox ownership. It did not. The Red Sox still didn't make super aggressive moves. So that's the biggest thing that heading into this next season that absolutely needs to change is have a bigger offseason. Don't shy away from spending money and acquiring talent that you need for your team. Coming up, what was the final thing that went wrong for the Red Sox in the 2024 season? That's coming up next. If you're looking to save money on tickets but still have a great experience, you can use Game Time because it'll check off both of those boxes for you. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. It's a great feature to have because it filters out what types of events you would like to go to based on your history when you customize your spot, and you can get seats that are the best, and it really does find the best seats for the best deals. And I found it to be great personally because I've gone to lots of sporting events in my day, and I'm trying to go to every major league ballpark one day with my fiance. So when we do that, we're going to be using Game Time to purchase all of our tickets because you get great seats for the absolute lowest prices. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets and more with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time truly has you covered for all of your ticketing needs, and it could change your life and keep you wanting a lot more. So make sure you check that out. Also, check out Prize Picks if you're looking for a fun way to play daily fantasy sports, as Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is great because it is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And you can feel like you're still winning money, even if one of your players gets injured, because your lineup still stays in place. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live, which is fantastic. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you place $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. All you have to do is download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly if you use code LOCKEDONMLB if you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. I promise you this could absolutely change your life, especially for sports fans like you. So make sure that you check out PrizePicks today. The Boston Red Sox had a frustrating 2024 season, and there isn't anything we can really say that makes that untrue. It just was what it was, and lots of things that went wrong between injuries and the front office making false promises and them not exactly hitting on the moves that they did make. So, what else exactly went wrong in 2024? Players who underperformed, because that was another big thing here is yes, you had some players who performed at a higher level than a lot of us thought they would, but you also had players who were not able to meet the expectations that the Red Sox had for them. And Bello was one of those players. Yes, he had a good second half pitching, and I wouldn't fault him for that. I mean, the way that he was able to go out there and absolutely shove in the second half after the All-Star break and turn things around was great to see and a promising sign. But his first half of the season, he took a step backwards from what we had seen from him in the past. And I like Bello because he shows a lot of resilience out there. And he can get really frustrated when things aren't going his way. But when that does happen, he's able to find a way to bounce back. And that's something I really respect about him. And that's a lot of what happened for him in that second half of the season. He was able to bounce back from a rough first half that he had. But in the first half of the season, he struggled, and the Red Sox lost some games because of it. And if he had been the version of Bello that we had seen in the couple years prior to that, they might win more games. And obviously, you can't place the blame on one person ever, but he is a player who falls into this category who performed at a little bit of a lower level than we thought he would. And we could say the same thing about Kutter Crawford. Kutter Crawford had a huge problem with giving up home runs in 2024. He was a guy who Red Sox fans got really frustrated with easily because the long ball was significantly hurting him and his ability to be effective for this Red Sox team. And he was really good in the season prior, and he had taken steps forward during spring training, only for him to fall back again when the season started. So you look at the season Kutter Crawford had and you say, wow, he could have pitched better. So those were the two rotation guys who I expected to have a bit of a better season than they did. Tanner Houck in the second half hit some bumps in the road, but overall, he was a really good pitcher this year. Red Sox best starter, most consistent. In the first half, especially, you knew what you were getting from him. He was going to go out there and he was going to produce a solid performance on the mound. But he did have some starts there in the second half that were frustrating to watch. And that was something that contributed to the Red Sox struggling and not being able to win as many games in that second half. So you have him and the way that he struggled in the second half, and hopefully he's able to get himself back on track in 2025 to what he was in the first half, because we're definitely going to need that version of Houck. And then you look at the position players, and obviously we talked about Devers, who didn't perform exactly at the level people wanted him to, wasn't able to come up big and get that big hit when the Red Sox really needed it. And a lot of that was due to him battling that shoulder injury all season long. He probably felt so much pain when he swung a bat. So it's hard to really fully blame him for that, because it was the type of scenario where he was trying his best, but it was hard for him to get himself to a point where he could hit efficiently because he was experiencing all that pain. I love Devers. I feel like he's going to turn things around next year. Hopefully, once he recovers fully from that shoulder injury, if he has the opportunity to, hopefully he doesn't have surgery that's going to keep him from playing at all in 2024. We just hope that doesn't happen, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in 2025 if he's healthy. And then you look at Cedar Rafaela, who, yes, was a rookie and defensively was miraculous, but his struggles at the plate went on for far too long because he struggled really early on. And I said, okay, this is his, rookie year. He's trying to adapt and figure out his game, what works for him, what doesn't. And that's fine. And then he started to improve a little bit, and the Red Sox kept pushing for him to improve his plate discipline. And he was constantly swinging and missing and jumping the gun and not wanting to take any pitches. And that's something that I didn't see improve as much as I would have wanted to see improve throughout the course of the season. I would have wanted to see him develop more of that plate discipline as the season went on. But the fact that he continued to strike out was tough. And speaking of strikeouts, the team as a whole struck out too much. I mean, double-digit strikeouts as a team in a lot of games this year is completely unacceptable, and I do blame hitting coach Pete Fatsi for a lot of that. I think the overall hitting approach that this team is taking needs to change because obviously whatever they're doing is not working. So that's a big factor in this, but guys striking out looking a lot and not having a good feel for the plate and the ball being thrown to them is problematic. And I hope that that's something that they can get to the bottom of this offseason, because as a whole, this team looked completely lifeless when they were striking out as much as they were. And that happened a lot in the second half, especially. So that's another big thing that took place with this Red Sox team that was problematic. And you look at all of these little things and you say, wow, this Red Sox team really struggled in a lot of different areas. And you hope that in 2025, they address some of those areas, and you hope the front office acknowledges that they were a problem and the Red Sox can get back to setting themselves up for future success, but also focusing on the now and hoping that the 2025 team finds success within that season. So lots to be frustrated about with the Red Sox, but let's keep the faith and hope that the front office does its job heading into 2025 to make this team a contender again. Thank you for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every aspect of the playoff picture. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Sully is great. He does a really good job with his show, keeping you updated on all things going on in baseball. So find that show right after this. As always, go Red Sox, and I will catch you on the flip side.